After years of being away from movie theaters, it is finally happening. Star Wars is returning to the big screen. Just this weekend, Lucasfilm announced 3 different Star Wars movies. And the company has actually given us a lot of official information about these different projects, including the talent that is attached to them. But I have heard additional information that I think will really help to explain what is actually going on with these films. Given the track record of Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy, many Star Wars fans are asking themselves, will we actually see these freaking movies? That is a fair question, and suffice it to say, there is a lot more going on behind the scenes than what Lucasfilm is revealing to the public. They are trying to make it seem like everything is fine over at Lucasfilm, and they have this grand plan for all these crazy movies. But the truth is a little bit more complicated. So in this video, we're going to break down all the 3 different movies. We're going to talk about the official information that Lucasfilm has given us, and then I'm going to fill you in with the tea. Smash a freaking like on this video and let's begin. Okay, so the way I want to do this, I want to first talk about the Dawn of the Jedi film, then we're going to talk about Dave Filoni's Star Wars movie, and lastly, we will talk about this Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy film. This is the Miss Marvel director. It's the movie surrounding Rey. It's the movie that's going to drop in 2025, but I want to save that for last. Okay, so first up, let's talk about James Mangold making a Star Wars movie titled The Dawn of the Jedi. Now, this was announced as a movie taking place 25,000 years in the past. Now, you can take a look at this graphic here. They had this on the screen for everybody at the presentation, and you can see that the Dawn of the Jedi era takes place even before the Old Republic. James Mangold is set to write and direct the film, and apparently he talked a lot about this project with Kathleen Kennedy during the filming of Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny. The movie is described as a biblical epic of sorts, calling back to some of the old Charlton Heston movies. Here's a couple of things that Mangold has said about the project. When I first talked to Kathleen Kennedy about it, I just said, I see this opening to make kind of a Ben-Hur or the 10 Commandments about the birth of the Force. The Force has become a kind of religious legend that spans through all these movies. But where did it come from? How was it found? Who found it? Who was the first Jedi? And that's what I'm writing right now. So that's the official company line here. A movie written, directed by James Mangold, all about the birth of the Force, the birth of the Jedi. And I love the idea of it being a biblical epic, and I think Mangold is a great choice for this kind of a movie. But that's the official stuff. Now let me tell you what's actually going on with this freaking movie. Some of this is speculation, but just follow me here. I strongly feel this is actually the Taika Waititi movie.
Are you serious?
If you look at the logo and some of the concept art that was released when Taika was doing his movie and when Lucasfilm was talking about that, it evoked a lot of the imagery of the Dawn of the Jedi era. Dawn of the Jedi was a whole series of books and comics done in the expanded universe a long time ago. This image here particularly reminded a lot of people of the Thrower. These were these massive pyramid-like ships that took all of these Force-sensitive people to Tython like 36,000 years ago in the old expanded universe canon. The TLDR on this was that these ships started popping up and taking all of these Force-sensitive people to Tython, and that is where the first Jedi Order was born. This is sort of the birth of the Force for organic beings in our galaxy. Now, I think since the time of Taika Waititi's movie announcement, this project has been in development at Lucasfilm in some way, shape, or form. This is why you have things like Tython popping up in the 2nd season of The Mandalorian, and you have the Rakatan Empire mentioned in comic books and in the Andor show. Another interesting piece to this puzzle is the fact that the Hollywood trades have been mentioning Taika's movie for over a year now in different reports. This is usually an indication that the project is still being developed in some way, shape, or form, and yet Taika himself has sort of downplayed his involvement in this film, and Lucasfilm themselves have not really updated us on whether or not the Taika movie is going to go forward. I think this is because the Taika Waititi movie is still moving in production, but has just taken Taika out of the picture and has replaced him with James Mangold. This, by the way, is very similar to what just happened with Damon Lindelof, who they had established a writer's room around. They were sort of building out this next Rey sequel era movie with Damon Lindelof. They quietly removed him from the project and just brought in Stephen Knight within a couple of days. So the Lindelof movie is still happening, just without Lindelof. This is very common in production, but especially over at Lucasfilm. And so I think what happened was on the set of Indy 5, Mangold and Kathleen Kennedy became somewhat close. They were likely discussing just everything going on with Lucasfilm, with Star Wars, with the fans. And while they were having those conversations, Taika Waititi's Thor: Love and Thunder comes out and his stock or social cachet drops dramatically online. Like after Love and Thunder, I saw a lot of fans turn on Taika Waititi super hard, and they did not think he was the right fit for Star Wars at all after that. So I feel as though maybe Kathy floated the idea of this project to James Mangold, wondering if he would be willing to come on board and replace Taika so that this film still comes out. And it seems like he's down. And let's be clear, that is a W. James Mangold over Taika Waititi all day. I would much rather have Mangold's sensibilities on something as important as the Dawn of the Jedi than a friggin' goofball child like Taika. But here's the problem. That means that this is a relatively recent development, and there's no way that Mangold has actually started in earnest writing this movie. He might have some ideas, he might have some things that he's working on, but he's working on Indiana Jones right now. And he told Collider at Star Wars Celebration that he's not sure which project will come out first between this Star Wars movie and the Swamp Thing movie. Because you see, James Mangold is also in talks to write and direct a DC movie all about Swamp Thing. Now, we've heard that Disney is incredibly frustrated with Lucasfilm and Star Wars in general. One of the big things that they're mad about is the fact that movies are not happening. Kathleen Kennedy took this big break, but we know that she's lost a ton of different directors and a ton of different projects have fallen by the wayside. Apparently, it has gotten so bad that Disney has told Kathleen Kennedy if she does not have a movie on track for 2025, she will no longer have a job. Her job is dependent on this next movie coming out, and there's a lot of downward pressure from Disney onto Lucasfilm for them to get this sorted out. And we will talk about the 2025 movie with Rey freaking Skywalker in just a minute, but I think it's important to understand that that movie itself just established a writer's room last year, and that writer's room was surrounding Damon Lindelof. It lost Damon Lindelof, moving forward with Steve Knight, and it's being sort of rushed. Like, I don't know how else to say this. That movie is not this well thought out, well constructed plan. It is something that is being rushed out to meet this 2025 deadline. So basically, James Mangold has to finish up doing post-production on Indy, the Dial of Destiny. Then he has to go do a press tour, release that film, and then he can start writing both the Swamp Thing movie and the Star Wars movie. And so frankly, I give this movie a 60% chance of actually coming out. If this 2025 movie doesn't come out and Kathleen Kennedy gets the boot, then it's very likely that this movie with James Mangold falls apart. I also think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on Indiana Jones 5 now. If that movie wildly underperforms, I could see Bob Iger stepping in and saying, we don't want James Mangold to do a Star Wars movie now. He just delivered this massive bomb for this huge franchise, and a lot of fans are mad at him. I would love to live in a world where Star Wars was just killing it. They had a perfect track record, and the idea of getting James Mangold to write and direct a Star Wars movie about the Dawn of the Jedi is freaking awesome, and I would love to not have all this baggage and all these reasons to doubt that it will ever happen. But this movie is not a home run. It has not even really been started in earnest, and again, I give it about a 60% chance of actually coming out. But okay, now let's talk about the Dave Filoni movie, and to me, this is the most exciting announcement, even though we don't fully understand what this movie is going to be about, and it doesn't even have a title. Now, the official company line is that Filoni's project is going to focus on the New Republic and close out an interconnected story that is being told in series including The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka, and other Disney Plus shows as well. Here's what Dave told Variety about the movie. On a base level, I would just say the coming conflict, the growing idea that the Empire wasn't as defeated as a lot of people want wanted to believe and that the remnant is out there. We saw that from the very beginning with The Mandalorian and how Giancarlo Esposito's character Gideon was plotting. There are always people that are willing to undermine something that the Republic is trying to build and put back on its feet. I grew up with a lot of stories in the expanding universe that were told exploring what happened after Return of the Jedi. There has been this, for fans, idea that there was a new republic and a remnant empire, and the conflict persisted after Return of the Jedi, even though the heroes won and were more in control. What did that control look like? And since Force Awakens is 30 years out from Return of the Jedi, we have room then to tell another story. That's what I'm coalescing into this time period. Now, unfortunately, the other official updates about the Filoni movie are kind of concerning. Kathleen Kennedy has said that this movie is at least 6 years away, indicating that Dave has a lot more story to tell in different television shows before finally getting into this movie. So maybe we'll get like 3 more years of development via some TV shows, and then Dave will start production on this movie and take about 3 years to make it. But okay, so that's all the official stuff. Let's get into the tea, man. Let's talk about what's actually going on. Well, first up, I think it's really important to mention how concerning it is that there's nothing about Jon Favreau attached to this movie. It was rumored over a year ago from Grace Randolph that this team of Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were indeed going to be headed over to the cinematic side of things. And it's been a long-standing rumor that they were going to develop a movie that essentially would be heir to the Empire, and this was what all of these different shows in the Filoniverse were building towards. But all of the rumors and all of the shows have really leveraged this team of individuals, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. So it's very curious that Jon Favreau is not attached by name to any of this in the Hollywood trades, no rumors, nothing. Favreau is not attached to the Filoni movie. And unfortunately, I think recent rumors might explain why, as it's been breaking from a ton of people, including myself, that Jon Favreau had a major falling out with Kathleen Kennedy and almost walked away from Lucasfilm completely. It is even possible that after this season of The Mandalorian, Favreau actually does stop producing shows over at Lucasfilm, and perhaps Kathy and Dave will just take over, juggling all of those stories together to finally get to the film. Now, let me be perfectly clear here. This is a W regardless. Dave Filoni getting a movie I think is fantastic, and I think he has the genius and the creative to be the new George Lucas, to write and direct epic Star Wars movies, to take Star Wars on totally and completely as the creative visionary and then to move it forward. I actually think it's a no-brainer to give Filoni more control, and I wish that his movie was the one being streamlined to actually come out in 2025. But unfortunately, that's not the case, and we have to see this announcement for what it really is. There's a lot of baggage, rumors, and bad news going around about Lucasfilm. The current season of The Mandalorian is pretty shaky, and I would say is the least good season out of the 3. Now, word is the final 2 episodes are going to be freaking awesome, and of course, the Ahsoka show looks incredible. By the way, going to be doing more videos about Ahsoka because it's mind-blowingly cool what they're doing with that show. But the reality is the Mandoverse itself is on shaky ground. Book of Boba Fett was not that great, and the pulling back of Luke and Grogu and just injecting them back into the Mandalorian story feels really janky. This season of The Mandalorian, not that great. And there's apparently big time beef between Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy. On top of that, Pedro Pascal might not return as the Mandalorian after this season. He wasn't even at Star Wars Celebration. I know he sent in a video, but he's not even there. This is the star of their hit show. It's called the Mandoverse. Like, this should be a massive deal. Why is Pedro Pascal not there? Well, again, there are rumors that he has this major beef with Kathleen Kennedy and with Disney, and I think he might either be killed off in the finale of this season of The Mandalorian or jettisoned out of canon and, just sort of left on the sidelines. Regardless, I don't think Pedro's going to be a big part of whatever Star Wars does next with the Mandoverse. So unfortunately, given the fact that the Mandoverse is on such shaky ground, the fact that Kennedy's job specifically relies on the 2025 movie, and that this movie is supposed to be 6 years away and doesn't even have a title, I'm unfortunately going to have to give this movie a 50-50% chance of ever actually actually being on the movie screen. And all of that takes us to the movie by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, the 2025 movie, the movie that was referred to as the Lindelof Star Wars movie up until a month ago. According to the official information, this movie will be set after the events of 2019's Rise of Skywalker, and it will feature Rey as she builds the new Jedi Order. Star Wars is celebrating the fact that this movie marks several milestones for the franchise. Obaid-Chinoy is the first woman and person of color to direct a Star Wars movie. The Pakistani filmmaker won 2 Academy Awards for documentary short in 2011 for Saving Face and in 2015 for A Girl in the River, The Price of Forgiveness. And she most recently directed 2 episodes of Ms. Marvel. The film is apparently set 15 years after the Rise of Skywalker and will focus on Rey rebuilding the Jedi Order. And before getting into all of the red flags for this movie and why I think this is going to be a truly horrific disaster of a situation, I do just want to say I'm personally not completely against Daisy Ridley coming back to the role as Rey. I actually think there are redeeming qualities to that character, and it's not Daisy Ridley's fault that the writing throughout the sequel trilogy was really whimsical, treated her with absolute kid gloves, and didn't give her actual development. It is possible that bringing her back could further the development of the character and perhaps make some fans just be more open to more Rey content. So I, for one, am not going to be completely and totally against the movie. I'm not going to boycott the film. I want to check it out, and I want to see what they have cooking up. But this movie's production is not going as smoothly as Lucasfilm wants you to believe. And again, I think there are massive red flags, like Kathleen Kennedy-sized and shaped red flags all over this film. I mean, first of all, at a base level, doing more sequel trilogy content, bringing Rey back and sort of doubling down on the stuff that Disney Star Wars has done is such a wild idea. Like, again, both the other movies I think would be much more, let's say, accessible to most Star Wars fans. The Star Wars fan base currently is quite divided. A lot of divisive conversations about all the different content, but this really started with The Last Jedi and with the sequel trilogy in general. So it's crazy that Lucasfilm realizes they need a massive hit. They need it in 2025 or else, and they decided to double down on the sequels. On top of that, Sharmeen is an interesting choice to say the least. She is most known for doing these 2 short documentaries and won Oscars, and these are like really activist, sort of feminist girl power movies. Like, she is completely an activist. And while at a face value, there's nothing wrong with being an activist, there's nothing wrong with having passionate beliefs, the Star Wars brand itself is plagued with this reputation of putting activism and identity politics above storytelling. And the thing that's really important to make mention of here is no matter where you are at with this issue, no matter how you view it, you must understand that doing something with a director like this, when a brand already has this reputation and a lot of the fans are going to take that the wrong way, is a mistake. If you're trying to make 4-quadrant mass appeal content, you have to realize we live in this really divided political time. And if you're going to do something that feels aggressively like it's activism on the left, you're going to turn off a ton of people. And the real reason that sucks is because the discourse around the movie and around the talent is going to be incredibly toxic, even for fans that don't really care about that kind of stuff and just want to watch the movie. In a nutshell, this is prime Disney Lucasfilm idiocy. This is them doing the same old song and dance and a lot of the stuff that got them into trouble before, and they're just doubling and tripling down on it. And then just from a business mind, just from the perspective of buzz and hype, Sharmeen is not a name. She is known as the Miss Marvel director, a show that barely anybody watched. And Stephen Knight is not a household name. Now, Peaky Blinders is a great show, but this dude has done a lot of movies that didn't actually work out to be very good. And on top of that, this movie was being built as the Damon Lindelof movie, and he's gone, man. That is just something they're going to ignore. But the reality is, from everything we are seeing, this movie is going through the same old song and dance and all of the similar pitfalls that all the movies have gone through that hit Kathleen Kennedy's desk. This is just Kathleen Kennedy's Lucasfilm problems on full display. And so the issue is that Star Wars is already suffering massive brand damage. The Mandoverse itself is seeing diminished viewership, and the discourse about Star Wars is pretty negative. And so Star Wars is in a really precarious spot. And yes, they need the movies, and yes, they need big ideas, and they need hype. But it's unfortunately the case that the very next movie we're going to see seems to be the most divisive film out of the three. It seems to be the least interesting movie out of the three, and the other two movies seem to be dependent on this 2025 Rey Skywalker movie actually succeeding. And unfortunately, I still have to say I'm giving this movie a 50% chance on actually ever coming out. Do you think all of these movies are actually going to come out, and which movie are you most excited for? Let me know in the comment section below. Smash a freaking like on this video, and if you want to watch more, why not check out this video I recently made all about the rumors regarding The Mandalorian Season 3 and why it has felt so different from Seasons 1 and 2.